welcome to episode 1 of the Interior Design Podcast.
We're here.
Cheryl and I are we're not going to do a catch up for the week this week because we have been working on this episode for quite a few weeks. But what we are going to do is we're going to have a little chat about the psychology of colour, which is this week's subject.
Yes. So I think it was really interesting. So a few weeks ago, obviously, we caught up with Karen, and she had some really interesting points on the psychology of colour,
which we'll share with you after this.
We just wanted to try and kind of summarise our thoughts, I guess, on psychology of colour and how you can use that, how you use that in design.
I suppose what is the psychology of colour is probably a good question to answer initially. It's the study of hues as a determination of human behaviour. Colour influences perceptions that are not obvious, such as the taste of food. Colours have qualities that cause certain emotions in people. How colour influences individuals may differ depending on age, gender and culture. Although colour associations can vary contextually between cultures, colour preference is thought to be relatively uniform across gender and race. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a really sort of short summary of what it means. But it's just such a huge subject, hasn't it?
It's massive. And I think that's something that came out from the conversation. We were talking to Karen for a couple of hours and we touched on it, but I don't think it's so vast, isn't it?
It's
so
huge.
Vast. And, we've just spoken about whether we discuss, certain colours and how you can use them in design. But I think the point I was making, Hayley, was that it almost is quite contradictory of what the psychology of colour is about. Mm-hmm. Rather than looking at greens, for example, and saying, right, so this week we're going to talk about greens and how you can use greens in design. This is actually about saying the psychology of colour isn't about selecting a colour based on what you like or don't like. It's about trying to understand the space, what you want that space to create, how you want to create that space, what the use of it is, how you want it to make you feel, and then reflecting. This has all come from obviously the conversation that we had with Karen about how you really have to delve into your own feelings and thoughts on what makes me feel calm, what makes me feel alive, what is it that you're trying to create in that space, and how do you replicate that, and therefore that's the colours will kind of that will dictate what colours you kind of use.
And I think that's really relevant to residential, and if you're designing your own space. But when you're designing a commercial space or you're designing something else, you've got to look at the culture. You've got to look at the different colours. Like, for example, we're talking about green. Green is the colour of money in the USA. Yeah. This is from Karen's book. It's also the colour of nature and symbolises the environment. In the East, green can symbolise fertility and new beginnings. It can also represent infidelity. Mm-hmm. In China, to wear a green hat is an expression that means your wife has been unfaithful to you. Yeah. In Britain, it's the colour of jealousy. Green-eyed jealousy was first used by Shakespeare in his play, The Merchant of Venice. And in Ireland, it's the colour of good luck. Green was the Prophet Muhammad's favourite colour and is the colour of paradise. In South America, though, green is the colour of death. So, the contrast of that is huge, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously from her section of symbolism of colour across the world. And I think that goes back to what we were just saying about culture. If you're, as a designer, it's not just about looking at the colour wheel. As Karen was saying, it's not just about looking at the colour wheel and saying what colours go with what. It's about delving so much deeper. So whether it be on a personal level with a client to try and understand what makes them feel calm and be able to reflect in a space if they want a space to feel calm, like a bedroom, for example. But if you're working on a commercial project, whether you're working just in the UK or whether you're working internationally, there's so many layers to it, isn't there?
And I think when you're doing a commercial project, for example, you have to be what is your target market? Like, there'll be certain, like, for example, I've got an inquiry at the moment which I think will come in the next few weeks for a Jewish restaurant. So my research on that is going to be, is there any colours that Jewish people associate with?
Yeah.
And so researching into the colour and what you're doing is really, really important.
I think also it kind of goes without saying that there's potentially with any new commercial project in hospitality that there may be an element of branding that's already been done, in which case there's probably a lot of information that's already and research that's already been undertaken from a branding point of view, from a branding exercise, that then kind of filters through into to design. It may be that that's not the case, so you kind of got a bit of a task on your hands to start kind of unraveling and unpicking.
I think do you know what I mean? I think we should do an actual episode on brand, because I'm a massive geek on brand, and I think that because we do branding and interior design, so what I really love to do is to create everything as in synergy together. But when someone's already got a brand, like you say, you can have a brand identity, you've already got Pantone colours possibly, and then you have to tap into all of that. But also think about what the space is going to be used for. You might, not, we're doing at the moment, we're doing a restaurant where the brand is orange and navy blue. I'm not going to literally make the whole interior orange and navy blue. I've got to kind of,
and it's almost like there needs to be an understanding of, okay, well, why is the branding orange and blue? Is there some background behind that? Has thought been given to, and maybe even, it may be that there hasn't been any consideration given to the psychology of colour in terms of branding, and ultimately branding does filter through into design, and because it's got to be cohesive, hasn't it? But that's a challenge, isn't it? If potentially you've got a brand that's got, that there is no kind of psychology of colour behind the brand that already exists and that is already present and has got some presence in the market. You've got a brand that's already present in the market and that's got a following. You are limited to what you have.
And also, I think that a lot of clients, from my perspective, I mean, I've been given a load for one of my projects recently. They're going to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on their interior design, on their interior fit out. No, I'm not that expensive.
Hundreds of thousands of pounds
on their interior design. I'm very expensive. But they're going to spend all that money, but they haven't actually thought about the brand, and they've just gone, oh, I've got someone to design my logo, and it's this, and then you've got to kind of try and go, okay, but you're telling me that you want a green forest, but your brand is purple, and it's really difficult, because if someone isn't invested in, if they don't understand the psychology of colour, and they don't value the branding process, they might value the interior design process, but they do work together.
I mean, when I think about the conversation that we had with Karen and what we learned from her, I found it very, very interesting, because probably quite naively, from a design point of view, you look at a colour swatch or a fan of colours, and as she said, you kind of, the first thing that you think about doing is getting out a colour swatch and saying, okay, well, what colours am I drawn towards? What colours do I like, do I not like? Never actually really thinking about why you like that colour, what it actually makes you, how it makes you feel when you look at it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think fundamentally, and that's why we wanted this to be the first episode, really, I think, is that it is such a core part of design. And whether it's interior designers as a profession or whether it's, Joe Public, I think that a lot more consideration should be given to stopping before you even start, as Karen said, before you even start looking at colour, stopping, reflecting on the space, the feelings, what you're trying to achieve,
behaviour,
the behaviour of what you're doing in that space, how you want it to feel, how you want it to look, natural day, things like natural daylight, and the context and the constraints that you've got based around that space, whether it's a bedroom, whether it's a restaurant, whatever it is.
Well, I mean, I'm sort of thinking about, like, when I design my bedroom, right? So I think about what kind of behaviour I want in my bedroom. I'm not going to go too far into that one. But I really struggle to sleep. So in my bedroom, I have to have blackout. So I've got blackout curtains, blackout blinds as well. I painted my ceiling really dark. I've got like a really lovely sort of warm grey, pinky, dark colour. And I've painted the ceiling and the walls the same colour. And I'm not really a massive pink fan, but because I know that pink is kind of quite a warm, it sort of makes me feel a little bit looked after.
Yeah.
And sort of dusty pink. Really love that. I really love that dusty pink at the moment. I'm kind of like, right, I'm going to put some pink in here.
Yeah.
And with sort of white bed sheets and sort of a bit of grey, and it just looks wicked. And I go into my bedroom now, and I'm like really happy. It's like it's sort of like a little hug when I go in there, and I think for me that's in my house. It's like where I've used colour to change the behaviour, because my bedroom was always really light, and I always struggle to sleep, and I actually sleep better now, and I feel more like I'm being prepared for sleep when I enter the bedroom.
Probably because
I should be doing other things as well.
Probably though, because you've considered the what you want that space to actually do for you. Do you know what I mean? I think it's always a difficult one, isn't it? Because I've done things in the past, like at home, that I've got totally wrong. I think I mentioned to you when we spoke about my lounge, and you know, and I decided to paint it. I decided to paint it really dark. I'm a very dark person anyway, as you know. I mean, I thought about painting it black, but I was like, it's probably a bit extreme. So I went for, like, obviously, you know, very much on trend, this really, really dark blue. All of the walls, all of the woodwork, like all of the woodwork is all the same colour. The backs of doors, all of the window frames, picture rails, ceiling, everything. And it was really, I mean, I loved it. It was really cool. The fireplace, all of the fireplace I've painted in the same colour. Really, really cool. And it feels like this cocoon. It's like very, very cosy. And that's great. And I live in an old Victorian house. And it's great in the winter. But I don't use that room. And I don't use it because I'm really...
Do you use it in the winter?
I don't use it anywhere near as much as I should. And it's because whilst I wanted it to feel like a cocoon, that's not the right room for it. Because all of a sudden I found myself feeling quite oppressed by it. I would go in and it was really oppressive. And even though my entire wardrobe, as you know, Hayley, is black. So, you know, I'm not fearful of dark colour. I don't wear any other colour other than black or khaki green. But it was really oppressive. And I thought, shit, I've fucked this right up. I've fucked this right up. So I painted the ceiling out in white again, just to try and lift it. And it's better, but it's still not right. And I hadn't considered that actually... Yeah, I thought I wanted that room to be quite cocoony and snug, but that works really well in certain seasons. Autumn and winter, it's great because I put the lights on and it's got a real ambience in there. But I don't use the space. I don't use it because I find it too much. So I you know, that's another fucking job to add to the list to change it. And natural daylight. I don't get much natural daylight in there because it's not south facing and again that. You know, stupidly, I kind of just went gung-ho, hell for leather. Oh, that's a great idea, and did it. And I guess it's not a bad thing because you learn from these mistakes, don't you, as a designer, whether you're doing, well, hopefully,
it's great to experiment in your house and then you don't screw it up for a client.
Don't fuck it up.
But they had a Google. There was a Google meeting room, and I don't know how factual this is, so don't quote me on it. But I heard that because the colour blue is supposed to be productive, Google painted all of their meeting rooms really not a bright blue, but like a royal blue. And they had blue lighting, and they went a bit mad with the blue from an interior design perspective. And people actually stopped using it because it was so oppressive. Yeah. So there's like a lot. There's a balance, isn't there? So,
do you know, that's a really interesting point, though. Just really quickly on that. The added complexity of design from when you're designing in residential, you're designing for a family or a couple or an individual. You're thinking about 2, 3, 4 people. You've got to think about 4 people's thoughts, feelings, how spaces make them feel. When you start talking about a commercial project, whether it be restaurant, whether it be office space, working environments, all of a sudden the task as a designer to try and understand and tick all of the boxes for a team of 15, 20, 50, 100 people, that is a big task to be able to deliver for every single person.
You're never going to please everyone.
You're never going to please everyone. That's it's
but then
quite
that's
a
why
challenge.
you have different venues. That's why you have different types of offices, because you attract a certain type of person. So it's really important to get under the skin of who is going to be using that space and what they're going to be doing in there, and like, so for example, okay, so let's have a look at blue. So Karen's book says in Japan, blue means fidelity. It's also one of the colours for good luck. In the West, blue is associated with sadness and feeling low, hence the phrase feeling blue. But blue is the colour of Krishna in Hinduism and represents love and divine joy. So there's nothing in there about productivity. So I don't know where that's come from. But yeah, I've always thought that blue was quite a productive colour. But obviously, Karen has very rightly so corrected me on googling the psychology of colour. But yeah, no, it's just really fascinating, and it's so very subjective.
And also, just going through Karen's book here, there is so much more to it than just specific colour. When you're talking about blues, greens, yellows, reds, within that colour group, there are so many intensities and tonal levels. So just picking up on what we were talking about blue. So I'm just reading on page one of the pages in Karen's books. She, the effects of blue on your mind depends on the intensity of the tone. Light blue is soothing, which makes it a great colour for sleeping and dreaming. The darker, the more mentally stimulating you'll find it. So it might help you to focus, boost your concentration. Regardless of its intensity, blue will always evoke a mental reaction. Whereas turquoise is uplifting and rejuvenating. Like, there's so many levels to it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it isn't just about a colour, about picking a colour. It's the colour, how that makes you, how you react to that. And then you have to start thinking about the intensity of that colour and the hue of that colour. It is massive. It's so interesting. I think it's so interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and things like trends. Like we're talking about, sort of, Karen is really kind of like, well, why are people using colour of the year, like, when they don't like it? And actually, you've got your colour of the year, and it is a trend. And from a design perspective, if you're designing something that's supposed to be on trend, and so if you're designing a bar that people want to go to, and it's got to be on trend, and that's one of your briefs from the client, you should be using some colours that are on trend. So looking at the colour of the year would be a natural, like, draw for that. But if I'm designing something and I don't like it, it doesn't work. Like, I can't make it work. So I think having it's so interesting, and it's so deep, like, and Karen rightly says, it's like going down a rabbit hole. So episode 1, our first guest for the first ever podcast is Karen Haller. Karen works with businesses and design professionals to use colour and design to improve well-being, support mental health, and create positive change in the world. Karen is the author of The Little Book of Colour, How to Use the Psychology of Colour to Transform Your Life. And we are really excited to bring Karen into the podcast.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. I'm really looking forward to hearing what her thoughts are, because there's a lot of information in this book, not just in terms of colour from a design perspective, but colour symbolism of the world, like colour in relationships, colour in your personality. I mean, there's loads in here. It's a cute little book. I'm excited. Let's go.
Let's do this. What's the biggest piece of advice that you can give to interior designers about colour?
I think that is that the world of colour does not start and stop at the colour wheel. It seems to be in, and even when I studied interior design, all we got was, I think, half a day on the colour wheel. And I can understand that a lot of teachers, when they have so much to teach in the curriculum, and when you open up colour, it is a Pandora's box, right? So what do you teach that's very condensed, very contained, and there's a kind of a start and a finish to it. And so the color wheel is something that's very, very contained and very small, and you can teach the color wheel in 10 minutes actually. Once you start going down the color rabbit hole,
Oh, it is a rabbit hole, isn't
it
it?
is a rabbit hole, and it's a wonderful rabbit hole that you can just dive and dive and dive. And if you want to make color your specialty in your business, step away from the color wheel and see what else is out there, and you will just it will be a lifetime of learning. So even though this is my, color psychology is my area of specialty, I will never ever stop learning, because it's to do with humans and behavior and how we react, how we respond, what's going on in society. That is always shifting and always changing. So our relationship to color is shifting and changing, and the colors that we need and what that means, and our response to color. And I'm learning all the time. So if you really love color, then let's say put the color wheel just to one side and just dive in, and the most like exciting, amazing world will open up to you.
I guess though it's sort of like anything, isn't it? That there's a fun, like, the color wheel is kind of classed as this fundamental, it's the kind of starting point. It's like kind of the building blocks almost of design in terms of color. It's how far you then want to, and if whether you're an interior designer, by profession, or whether you're just interested in, doing a project at home, and we've spoken about this before, it's kind of how far you want to kind of take it, and how far you want to push yourself, in terms of professionally. I think really, really good designers should be able to, understand the fundamentals, but ultimately be able to push even harder than that. And we've spoken about this, about thinking outside the box and pushing it as far as you possibly can. I did just, Karen, want to ask you, you mentioned earlier about the fact that you wrote the book because you wanted to get the world to fall in love with colour again. Why, can I ask, in your opinion, what do you think, why do you think we found ourselves in a position where people were scared of colour, or everything was very, very bland? Like, why do you think we got to that point? And we're still there now a little bit, I think, I actually feel like there's the part of, people want to be accepted. So, it's kind of this, not keeping up with the Joneses, but that whole concept of, oh, well, I'll do what neighbour's done, or I'll do what they've done over there. And, without being maybe as original as they could be. And I think it takes courage to really push yourself to the, to the limits, and push your boundaries in terms of colour. But that was my thought earlier, was why do you think that we found ourselves in a position where people were scared?
With us as human beings, and this still comes back from our caveman times, if you think back then and put yourself in that position, we lived in clans, we lived in groups, and if you did something in that group and the group didn't agree, you were pushed out of the group. Now, back then, that would have meant that you couldn't survive, because it would have been death, because you would have been on your own. So the need to belong, and the need to be a part of a group and part of a community, and not be ostracized and not be cast out, we still have that in us. Some of our biggest fears are being judged, not being accepted, not belonging, and not being accepted by our peers, our friends, our family, our social group, our community, etc. There are people that don't care about that, and we're at a point now that we can survive on our own, and we aren't meant to be alone. We are meant to be in communities. We are meant to, we're not hermits. We're not everyone wanting to be isolated. But the biggest thing is that we want to belong, we want to feel accepted, and we want to ultimately be loved. That's the ultimate thing for human beings, because the two polar opposites is fear or love, right? And everything else is in between those two things. So if we want to be accepted, we look to see what our community is doing, or what our friends doing. Therefore, the keeping up with the Joneses, therefore going to the dinner party and saying, oh, I've got elephant's breath on my wall. Oh yes, so do I. Do you know what I mean? Because that was the dinner party conversation at that time. So people were thinking, oh, I'm feeling accepted because I've got this color or I've got this design style in my home, like other people that I admire or other people that I want acceptance from. And therefore, we are getting our needs met from outside, external to us. This is also what trends do. Trends, if you follow a trend, you are accepted and you belong to a group of people that you don't even know. Like when people queue up at 2:00 in the morning to get their latest iPhone, they believe and feel that they are a part of a community of millions of other people that they don't even know. But that's enough for them to feel like they belong. Quite often we'll do everything that we think everyone else will agree with in order to be liked, in order to be judged, which is something that happens from childhood, until the day we die. That can happen.
I would just like to hear an example of a challenging situation that you've been in, whether it be with a designer or whether it be with an end user, with a client, that you're working with directly, just to try and get a better understanding of, in layman's terms, as I had a client and this was the initial briefing meeting that we had. They didn't know what they wanted to do. I followed this process and we came to the conclusion that this is what we were going to do.
Yeah, so what I will share, and something that that helped me put my whole process together and my whole framework. When I first started, I would sit down with the clients and start asking them, what, after the whole rapport building and all the, so that initial side. When I started, I talked about color very early on, and I would show them, ask them what colors they like, what colors they don't like. I would show them fan decks of color, thinking, great, because then I can whittle it down and I can start getting an idea of the color palette. And I realized that was the biggest mistake. And it took me a few times to realize that was the biggest mistake to make. As soon as I started showing them colors, because they were becoming so emotionally connected, because when we see color, we're already having an emotional experience. That's like when, we go into any shop, any restaurant, going into anyone's home. That's why people straight away are emotionally connecting. And I couldn't, and they went down this rabbit hole of, oh, I like this color, I don't like this color, or this color reminds me of this. And I couldn't get them back up to do the rest of the consultation. They were stuck in this. This is why I now don't talk about color when I am speaking to them, and why I ask them lots of questions that inform me about color and inform me actually about them and their personality.
Karen, what is your favorite color and why?
Inside the book, you will see that there is an orange.
Oh, beautiful.
Right? And that's a marigold orange of a marigold flower. And I've actually got marigold flowers in the garden. I thought I must pick one to show. That is my favorite. Marigold orange is my favorite color. So quite often when people say, oh, what's my favorite color? And they, someone might say pink or green or blue, really go down to the specific color, because it's not just any orange. It is absolutely that marigold orange. In color psychology terms, the positive is all about fun and playfulness, and it's that childlike mischievous. Now, every color has a positive and adverse, and a lot of people see orange as being very flippant and very childish and not to be taken seriously. And so sometimes when people get very annoyed with the color orange or the color orange being around, that sometimes they won't take it seriously, so they might not take a brand seriously, or they might say, I have an orange personality, and they might just think, well, you're just too silly and not grown up and you're really childish. And I'm just like, oh, that's okay. I'm okay. Because when I do business, when I do business, I keep her in a box, right? She's in a box. But as soon as I'm allowed, I can bring her out, she's out. But I'm not like that when I work with corporates, when I work with brands, when I work with, clients. If I work with kids, I would, because it would be appropriate. But that color comes out. And it also reminds me not to take things too seriously. Orange flowers or something, it's very small orange in the house, like I don't have lots of around me. That just reminds me just to lighten up and to bring more fun in, and not to take things too seriously. Yeah, so that's what that color means to me.
So going back to what we can teach designers, what do you think the biggest faux pas designers make regarding color?
I think this is a subconscious thing, was that we can put our own preferences and meaning into what our client is saying. So for instance, if our client is saying, oh, I'd like a living room that was really relaxed and calming, if we don't find out and really dig into, but if we don't, explore under that and, okay, well, what does calming mean to you? What does calming look like? Yes. How would I know that if I did, and this is the question, one of the questions I do ask, for this room to be calming for you, what would it need to look like for it to be calm for you? Yeah. Because calming for you is likely to be different calming for me. Absolutely. But if I hear, you might have your own version of calming and your own version of what relax means, and your client has just said those two words and you go, yeah, got it, I know what it means. You might not realize that you've actually put your own version of that onto it, because some people's idea of calming is your idea of stimulating and your idea of probably noisy. But some people can live in spaces because of their personality. It can be still quite lively and vivid, but for them it's calming. But for me, I'd be exhausted in it. But then it's not for me to go, this isn't a calming space. It is, if you think, if this is calming for you, then we will design around this.
You mentioned earlier when you were explaining the book, Karen, that this book naturally evolved into a kind of a bit of a Bible for designers. You actually wanted this to be accessible to everyone, didn't you? You wanted it to be just a book that was that should read it to understand color. It's great if you have got if you can get an interior designer on board, but if you obviously just at home and you've got a new project, a new scheme, you're redecorating the lounge or the kitchen or whatever. If people are not in a position to instruct an interior designer to assist with choosing and advising on color, whether that be a designer or yourself, what advice would you give to the general public? Because I think a lot of people struggle with this. If they cannot take on the professional services of an interior designer, I get it a lot with friends that will message me and say, help. And there'll be colour swatches on the wall of them saying, we don't know what colour should we go for? And I'll go around and I'll have a chat with them. And obviously the beauty of that is that I know them. So I know who they are. I know a bit about their personality. I feel like it's almost a case of, is it about trying to understand a client's personality to be able to understand what feels calming, what feels exciting, what feels stimulating, which you can then directly reflect into colour psychology, potentially. How does somebody, when they're doing it on their own, get to that point where they fully understand what makes them tick? What is it that gets them excited or gets them or allows them to feel relaxed?
So this is personal development. This is what we do for the rest of our lives, is exploring, discovering who we are. This is exactly why this book,
I was going to say, read the book, because
that's is the book, because exactly what you said. So when I was writing this book, and the whole time I'm writing it, I'm just thinking, it's got to be more than color. This book just can't be about color. And I was 3/4 of the way through and I went, oh my God, this isn't a book about color at all. This is a book about self-expression. Color is just the vehicle. So at the very beginning, when you read the introduction, you will see, and there's one paragraph in there that still makes me tear up, because it is all about who we are as people. When we can connect to ourselves and we get clearer, and all the stuff, all the negative self-belief talk, all the stuff that we have going on in our head, all this negative talk, as we clear all of that, we get clearer and clearer to who we are. And then it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, because we are using color as a way of expressing who we are from the inside out. And that's what, and color is just a vehicle for that. There's many other, when I say a vehicle, people do that expression through music, they do it through food, they do it through sport. I mean, there's a number of universal languages that you don't need to say a word. You don't need to speak, and color is one of those universal languages that doesn't matter where you are in the world. It is something that we connect to. That's what I would say to you, is to read, because when you read the book, you'll go, now I get what she's saying. There's little frameworks in here, there's little exercises, there's, little processes. And that's exactly why this book was written, is to get people to start to discover who they are, to remove. And the amount of emails that every single day on Instagram, I get a private message of people saying, my God, your book has absolutely changed my life. And I say, well, that's great, but it's you that's changed. I've had people read this and just go, well, I thought it'd be more on interior design. It doesn't really tell me anything. But they're people who misunderstood what the book is about.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And then other people just go, gosh, this is life-changing. I now have more confidence to be who I am, and I don't care what other people think. I'm now going to decorate my home, and I don't mind what other people think anymore. And to me, like, I just write and just go, oh my God, you have made my week, right? Because this is what I want to hear.
Yeah.
This is, and it makes me tear up. When people really, really connect back to themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, I need a tissue.
Oh, bless you.
I have one handy. But that's what it's about, because that's what color is. Color is a form of self-expression. And so we're either using it. So in the book, I talk about Darwin's theory, and just like nature, we're either using it to attract, we're using it to hide or to camouflage, we're using it as a warning sign. And that's exactly why we use color. We're using colors for those, and to attract is to be liked. And that's how the animals use it in the animal kingdom. And we are just the same. We are just the same.
In this moment, I'm sat here thinking, well, I've clearly got a lot to learn, because my entire wardrobe is black. Am I attracting? And actually, interestingly, there's a little part in the book that Hayley pointed out to me earlier about using colour in was it fashion?
Oh, like how to what to wear. Yeah.
Dressing for colour.
So when you go to your clients,
I have to admit, I stopped reading at that point because I was really interested in the other bits, because it's all interior design, but I really need to read that.
Yeah. So when you go to your client and you're having a client meeting, you can wear colours to not only support how you want to feel, but also how you want to interact with your clients. Because you might want to come across as authoritative, or you might want to come as very approachable, or if you're designing for children's room, you want to come across as really playful, so the children open up to you.
I'm a one-trick pony. I just go dressed as Morticia Adams every single day.
Oh, yeah. I'm so obsessive about what I wear when I go to a client, especially when I first go.
Yeah.
Because I wear navy a lot, so when I'm going to a client meeting, I'm always kind of like, well, all right, who are they? What are they doing? What am I going to wear? And I dress to the client, and I constantly wear navy because and blue and things like that, because I know that's quite well. I googled blue is a good colour to wear when you meet a client, but that moves us very nicely onto the Google question, because when I first started speaking to you, Karen, you said to me, how do you find out about the psychology of colour? And I said, I just Google it. And I got a bit of a telling off.
No, you didn't. I just went, oh, no.
Rightly so. No, now I've read all this. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah.
There is, it's just the same as, but it's like, I know people who are doctors and they go, you know, I get clients, or patients coming in all the time going, well, I've got this problem with my knee. So I Googled it and it said I've got this, and this. And the doctor says, well, look, let me have a look at it. You know, like, why don't I have a look? And people are self-diagnosing themselves. Now, the thing with color psychology, you and everyone can do this. Google color psychology infographics. You will see 1,000 infographics come up. I actually take those infographics and put them into my course and get my students to dissect them. Everything is called color psychology. So when you look at those, I can see some color psychology. I see color and culture. I see personal color association. I see Vasnu. I see feng shui. I see chakras, all different modalities, all under the umbrella color psychology. So no wonder when you look at that and you think, oh, well, if it says it, it must be. It's not. Everybody just lumps everything. People lump color healing, like color therapy, all under color psychology. It's not. They're very, very different things. So I get journalists call me up a lot and they go, oh, we want to talk about color therapy. And I say, I'll just have to let you know I don't do color therapy. What I do is, and I explain, they go, oh, no, that's what we want. But everyone, or I get called a color therapist, I get called a color healer. And I'm like, oh, no, I don't. No, color psychology does not heal, right? It's not, what can heal is chromotherapy, which is colored lights. And if you've got, even you've probably had a sporting injury and you've had infrared on your muscles, different colored lights have been said to have different effects and heal, but that is by someone who actually is trained in color therapy. So that is something very different again, but everything gets lumped under. And that's why I just went, oh, no, don't go on to Google, don't. So that's why. So no, it wasn't a telling off. It was just a word of caution. Judgment. What is it that I like? What do I love? What makes me feel good? What are my happy colors? What are colors that make me feel restful? Think of all the different moods, different feelings, different behaviors, relaxed, calm, lively, excited, optimistic, happy, all these different whole range of emotions, like positive emotions. You might need more energy, or you might need to be more, you need a bit more motivation. Think about all those colors that will give that to you. And sure, in my book, I have lots of tables that say what that is in color psychology. Sometimes when we have our own associations to color that are personal to us, they might transcend what that color means psychologically. What I mean by that is you might absolutely love color, the turquoise, because it reminds you of swimming in the ocean, or going to the Caribbean, and it might give you those beautiful, wonderful memories. And that becomes that's very conscious for you. That's what I mean by it transcends psychology, because you have that conscious association. Then in the book with the color psychology, you'd be able to see that, okay, I love that, and it reminds me of my holidays. What I wouldn't do is put it in my bedroom, because it's a blue that actually wakes up the body and wakes up the mind. So it wouldn't be conducive for sleeping, but I could put it into the bathroom, because in the morning I need some help to wake up. If I've got blue light, or I've got some blue turquoise towels, or I've got something that is blue, like a turquoise blue in there, it helps me to feel more refreshed and more alive. That might actually give me a boost in the morning.
I love that.
You can do it. Yeah, you can do things like that. Yeah.
I think that's really, really good advice for people because I genuinely think, that people that are redecorating or have got a new project that they're looking at doing at home don't give that level of thought to these things. They look at a color swatch, a color chart from, they go to the DIY store, they pick up all these swatches and they think about what they like, but they don't actually investigate what is it about that you do like? What is it that you like about that? How does it make you feel? and how can I utilize that in the right setting? And as you say, actually it just takes maybe a little bit of time for people to not focus so much on having an array of color in front of you, but picking out a select few that do make you feel good, and then starting maybe to just analyze that a little bit. What is it about that color that I like?
And then what room would I put it in?
Look good. Why do I think I like it? How does it make me feel? And then, okay, is that the right color for the bedroom? Because
it could be too stimulating, for instance.
Exactly.
So the other way to start is also think about what behavior you want in the space. So I always start my consultations then at the end. So then I come forward. So how do you want to feel in that space? How do you want to behave in that space? Now, a lot of people really find that question quite daunting, because it's like, what do you mean by behave? And I say, what would you be doing in that space to know that you're feeling, if you want to feel calm in this space, what would you be doing to know that you were feeling calm? And then from what those behaviors are, which is, this is, you can find this all in the book, then what the behaviors are, then you can then work backwards and go, okay, it's these colors, but it's this color palette, it's this seasonal personality, because this is my personality, it's this saturation of color, because very soft pink is actually a light red, which is physically soothing, and a stimulating pink is red, which is a very different energy to a soft pink. Or a light blue is a very different energy to a turquoise, to a dark blue. But it's not just, oh, I want blue in the space because I want to feel, my mind. You want to be mentally soothed or mentally stimulated. So there are a number of steps to go through. If you can always think about, how is it that I want to feel in this space, and what would it look like? What would I be doing? Because everyone would be relaxing different. Everyone does, the party's different. Everyone does, how they host, how they, in the bedroom. Some people want very stimulating bedrooms. Other ones want very soothing bedrooms. Other people need very soothing workspace. Other people need it really lively to stimulate them and to get them going. If you're in sales, you do not want a calm for space at home. You need a really dynamic one, because you have to be on the ball and dynamic. And in fact, you might not even have a chair. You'd probably be standing doing all your calls.
I was going to say that. I'd if I'm sort of in sales mode for
you stand,
I always stand up.
You can hear it. You can hear the difference. So there are a lot of things, but it's not impossible at all. And it's just about having the confidence, experiment, give it a go, have fun, get curious, don't get scared, don't get worried. That's the biggest thing that we then do, is like, oh my God, I can't do this, I'm scared, what does everyone else got? That's how quick it can descend.
Yeah, we revert back so quickly.
So
things
quickly.
Get tough, it's like, well, the easy option is to just do what everyone else does.
Yeah, and you know what? Everyone else is doing what everyone else has done.
Karen, thank you so much.
You're more than welcome.
It's been a really, really fascinating conversation, and really I've learned from you, and hopefully still continue to learn from you. How can we get in touch? How can we follow you? And can you
thank you. So I do have, for interior designers, I do have a free ebook on my karenhaller.com website. In the top right hand corner it says free ebook, and that is the 10 myths that limit you using color successfully. It's a free ebook for designers. And then for the everyday color lover, designers as well if they like, over on the littlebookofcolor.com, the first chapter of my book is there for free as well. They can download the first chapter and read that. And if it sounds the way that they want to use color and it sounds like them, then they can also buy the book. And then on social media, I always, that's all I talk about is color. So
I'll put your link on the show notes as well.
Great. Yeah. So on Instagram, it's Karen_Haller_color.
Great. So, it's been incredible talking to you. It really, really has.
It's been wonderful. I love this conversation. It's been really it's raw and natural and open and honest. And
I'm going to go and spend some money on some clothes and change in my wardrobe, because I'm genuinely sat here thinking my house is a really good reflection of my authentic self, but I've got so stuck in a rut. So the next time you see me on the next podcast, I'll have all sorts of colours going on, and maybe you'll watch it, Karen, and go, oh my God, she's changed. She listened to me.
You've changed. I wore black. I used to wear a lot of black when I was in corporate, and I know now I wore it to protect myself, because I was like a manager of 30 web developers, and to be taken seriously, I thought I had to wear black. I had to then work out colours. Like when I left IT and realised that's what I was doing, working out what colours can I wear, still give me that authority, or still make me feel very grounded and very centred, but without pushing people away or isolating or coming across as like I came across as very, very stern, and my nickname used to be Ice Maiden at work. How do I do that? Remove it straight away would have been too much for me. So I actually had to wean myself off very, very gently, because I had to find something that would be the supporting equivalent of that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like my mind's blown.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, more than welcome. More than welcome.
So that was Karen Huller, who wrote a book about the Little Book of Colour, if you hadn't got that already.
Very interesting.
Oh, man.
So interesting.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
It's like opening Pandora's box, isn't it?
Yeah.
There are so many other subjects around that we can touch on in this podcast. And
it'd be cool to know if any of the listeners have got any area that around psychology of colour that they would like to kind of learn a bit more about, or for us to kind of talk a bit more about.
Yeah, dive deeper into it.
Definitely.
Yeah. If anyone's got any ideas on that front about what you would like to hear from us, what would you like to learn, please get in touch. We are on socials. I've got all the we're on Instagram, and we're also on Facebook, and we've got a section of the Harp Design website which has a podcast area as well. But if you've got any comments or any ideas that you want to share with us, we'd love to hear from you. Any feedback, if you don't like our smuttiness, do we ramp it up? Do we ramp it down? There's lots more to come. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks for listening.
And we hope you can like and subscribe and listen to the next ones coming up. We've got some interesting episodes coming up about cradle to cradle sustainability and fabrics, and so lots of interesting content coming up. So keep subscribing and keep listening.
See you soon.
Thank you very much.